But even as we grasp at victory, there is a cancer, an evil tumor, growing, spreading in our midst. Shout! Shout! Shout out his name!
Nothing the party does is good. Even the war itself is good. The party wants you to believe we are at war, so as to channel your emotions away from their rightful
All right, well, there's a little clip from the movie based on the book by George Orwell, 1984, which I have right here. We'll be talking about that a little bit today. The 2 minutes of hate. So it looks absurd, right, when you see it that way. But I'm going to contend in tonight's podcast that when George Orwell was, when he put that into his book, he did it for a very specific reason, to call attention to certain realities. And I'm going to make the argument that there are people who manipulate us, who control us, who know that we need to feel outraged. We must feel angry on occasion. It's you've got to give us that that outlet. And the weird thing is like I feel like I can go through at least the last 100 years of philosophy and politics and whatnot, and I could piece it out and show it, but it's some sort of a secret. Like people don't know it's happening. So, and I find that perplexing, to tell you the truth. It you think that by now people would start seeing through it, but they're not enough anyway. Some are. Don't get me wrong. I think I need to move my head over here just a little bit. There we go. Yeah, I gotta look myself in the eye, and it wasn't really working before. So if you did not know that we were being manipulated intentionally before this podcast, hopefully by the end you will know. So my name's Anthony Horvath. I'm the host of the Gutencast. I'm the owner and publisher of the GutenBookPress.com website. Links to these things are in the description, or you can find me on X, either at the Gutenbook Press handle or at Anthony Horvath, where I sometimes cause a little bit of trouble. No, I'm just kidding. I get like 6 views. I have like almost $2,500 followers, and for some reason the X algorithm only shows my posts to like 10 of them at a time, which maybe is worth talking about in the context of this podcast tonight, but we'll come back to it. So I would encourage you, though, in the context of introductions, to like, subscribe, all that jazz. Really appreciate it. Share, spread the word, things of that sort. This whole program is a way to ultimately help advocate for the authors that we publish and the books that we publish. And I have about 25 or 30 authors that need your love. And so, as usual, I'll just state that we don't do any fundraising per se, but we do sell books. And so I hope that to support this podcast, you spread the word and you buy some books. Although that said, today I don't really have a lot of books to promote that we do actually publish. So I went through the catalog, and a little bit later I'll share the one that comes the closest, so to speak. So let's dive into it just a little bit. So to go back to Orwell and his 2 Minutes of Hate. So he was inspired by his experience and observations watching how the communists in the 1920s and 30s managed their get-togethers, and they would come together, and the top dogs would have a rah-rah session. And I can't really speak to how legitimate his the representation of these sessions were in his book, but having read a little bit about these struggle sessions, a little bit more detail. Struggle sessions were in China under Mao. Pol Pot had them in Cambodia. And both of those places ended up murdering tons of people. And at any rate, it would not surprise me if George Orwell was already very much seeing what communism was becoming, which is really ironic because he leaned to the left. He was a socialist, as near as I can tell, to his dying day. But those were mixed up times, I think. I'm not sure where he would be right now, especially looking back at the full history of the last century. But the point is that they were doing these things in the 1920s and all the way up. So like I mentioned, Pol Pot in Cambodia, that would have been in the 70s. Yeah, I don't know if they do struggle sessions still in China under the communists. I haven't heard anything about that. That'd be interesting to know. I think I'll look into that to see if the party is still doing things like that. But my point is that when the party did these things, they did so knowing that they were tapping into an instinct, a need, a want that people had. And so this should be almost a revelation. I'm guessing if you're watching this, you're not. My target audience is probably not the radical psychos who want to go and just break things to break things. But what was the quote by he was the attorney, Clarence Darrow, made the argument that every now and then, every man has a moment where he's got to raise a black flag and start slitting throats. Which, man, break things. We do have a tendency to want to do things like that, which is why when I said man before, I meant humanity, but men in particular do like to break things. We like to go out and chop wood, shoot things, chop things down, that sort of thing. Sports, contact sports, right? So we have these other outlets besides throwing people into ovens, which is fortunate, I would say. That's an innovative thing that we have in this country and in this time and place, and we shouldn't lose that. In fact, I have an idea for a podcast sometime, if I could find the right guest, that our sports, in my opinion, are one of the reasons actually that takes the heat out of the rest of civil society, because we have an outlet, either through competing directly or by supporting the teams that we like. And it's better to have a rivalry between, say, Ohio State and Michigan, where everyone sort of yells at each other, but mostly just sort of makes fun of each other, than to have and I was talking about sports teams, right? Rather to have some sort of animosity between actual states, which is a trajectory that we see happening in this country. Texas is not much fond of California, by the way, and neither is Idaho. They're not big fans of California. And that, I would say, is a toxic development that does not bode well for our society. But, the sports scene does take some of that heat out. But the point is that this is a facet of human nature that the people who manage us, the people who monitor us, the people who are manipulating us know about us. And so they always want to find an object of rage for us to direct our attention to, direct our hostilities towards. And we fall for it as a society, even here in the West, over and over and over and over again. And for the most part, I would say not to our benefit. Now, I've only been paying attention to these things, we'll say politics in general, since maybe outside of college, so 97, 98, I started paying a little bit more attention. But 9/11 really caught my attention and made me start watching things. Sort of this idea that, just because we haven't declared war on Al Qaeda, it doesn't mean that Al Qaeda hasn't declared war on us. So maybe I should be a little bit more alert to things. And one thing led to another, and over the last 30 years now, I've been paying pretty close attention. But what happened after 9/11 could very well be, depending on where you come out on it, is an example of how we were given an object of our outrage, and then that led to a disaster, right? In Afghanistan, in Iraq, you had all of the rah-rah. We were hit, let's go hit them back. And they really whipped us up, we should say. But in that case, of course, they didn't have to do a lot of work to whip us up, because in America, we were pretty riled up all on our own. But again, if you look back, there is a lot of the consensus is that the evidence that we were given was manipulated to achieve a particular end, the justification for an incursion into Iraq, which was unwarranted from the evidence. I might be the only person in the world left that believes that if we could go back in time and look at that evidence again, such as it was still maybe the right call. But I have some important caveats, and I don't really want to get into that as a whole subject, but I'll just kind of give one caveat, which is you should never go into a war unless you plan on actually finishing it properly. Just like you should never point a gun at somebody unless you have every intention or willingness to actually shoot them. If the circumstances warrant it, you don't point the gun of war at a country unless you plan on seeing it all the way through. And I was already of the view in 2003 that it was pretty unlikely, given our experience in Vietnam, that America was ever going to do that. So that was a caveat. So maybe it was warranted, but it was not warranted unless we were going to finish the job properly. Clearly, we have not. Of course, the other side of that same issue is that it was just a perfect case of being whipped up and manipulated into anger to go and break things without regards to the evidence. And the case could be made. The argument could be made, and I could probably also make that argument as well, even if I don't completely buy it. Well, let me rephrase it. I do think we were manipulated. To me, there's no question about that. But I don't really want to get into it. But Saddam Hussein was doing his own manipulations as well. His own generals thought that they had weapons of mass destruction. So we could be forgiven somewhat that our intelligence agencies concluded also. At any rate, so that would be another interesting podcast topic, right? The thing is that even though there's an awful lot of people who have taken the conclusion that Iraq and all that was wrong and bad, the lessons haven't quite been learned by a lot of people. And if I go back and I look through the last 20 years, I would say it was really about 2008, roughly, that I finally started understanding that you cannot take what you are being presented with by the media on its face. Like there's a certain sense in which, of course, you don't take everything on its face, but what I think I'm getting at is, like, it did not occur to me that anyone would maliciously, in bad faith, use the media to promote things. Like, they could be wrong, they could be mistaken, they could just be in error, they could be working off of incomplete information. Those things all seemed plausible, but that they would actively lie to achieve an end was not something until almost 2008 that that I had even considered was possible. It was just so innocent, so naive. And then since then, of course, since I've been awakened to this, I kind of see it everywhere. And I do actually have the book that opened my eyes here handy, Saul Alinsky, Rules for Radicals. That's not about the media per se, but it does speak to people who are coming to you and presenting something in bad faith. They say they want one thing when they actually want another, and they try to basically trick you into getting what they want based on that. Which I despise. I absolutely despise it. I think that if you believe something and you want something, you should state it plainly and clearly, without ambiguity, and then we can debate the merits of it. I don't like all this crap about trying to trick people into things. Now, no one said anything about. Yeah, okay, sound is good. So that kind of brings me to Jacques Ellul. And I'm going to share a little story about Jacques Ellul. I'm going to have his picture here. I think it's time to get rid of our thumbnail. So, funny story about Jacques. He was a French philosopher. He died in, I think, 94. My introduction to Jacques Ellul was in approximately 98. In the strangest turn of events. I have a couple live viewers, and I don't know who they are quite yet because they haven't sent anything. But it's possible they might know, if they're the ones that I think they are, about the old Cornerstone Music Festival. Cornerstone Music Festival was this really massive Christian music festival that was held on an old pig farm in Illinois. And I don't know when it started, but by the time that I found out about it in the middle of the 90s, it was in its prime, although starting to head down. And at that time, I was very heavy into Christian apologetics, which is the sort of the orderly defense of the Christian faith. Not that I've really kind of like abandoned that as an interest or anything, but definitely was in that vein a lot deeper at that time. And I was also teaching at a Lutheran Bible College in Illinois at the time. And I wanted to be a speaker at Cornerstone very badly. I just thought it would have been awesome. In fact, a lot of people went for the music. I did not. I went for the awesome speakers that they would have. They would bring in people from around the world who were top notch. People you would never be able to have a chance really to interact with unless you traveled to see them, really. And the topics were always provocative. There were things that I wanted to hear about. There was not a whole lot of wishy-washy stuff. It was all pretty hard-hitting, deep, substantive stuff. And I wanted to speak there. Ironically, so this is kind of interesting. Well, this is the reason why I'm telling you the story, is because it is interesting. They called the president at the Bible college and said, "Hey, do you have anyone who would like to speak at our festival this summer?" Like, just out of the blue, cold called them. Yeah, weird. And he thought of me. And the topic that they wanted me to speak on was, or us, Jacques Ellul. Now, in 1997, I was only a few years out of college, and I'd sort of vaguely heard about him, but that would have been it. Like, I knew that he had a book on Christian anarchy, and that probably was, or probably had heard of his most famous one, Technological Society. Certainly had never read them, and I was like, what? I don't think I Googled them because I'm not sure I had Google to look at. So I Yahooed them, and it was like, oh man, I can't in good conscience agree to speak on Jacques Ellul, because I know like nothing about him, which and I regret this. I should have said yes, I will do it, and then just taking the time to just read as much as I could about him. Now I know that I could pull that off pretty easily, but then maybe I just wasn't so sure. So instead, I offered, well, I'd like to talk about apologetics, and they said, we're moving away from that kind of thing. And I think that was kind of the moment, one of the moments the Cornerstone Music Festival sort of jumped the shark. They started moving off into these kind of crazy fringe things, pre-woke maybe, I don't know, but they didn't. The substantive topics that they used to address were no longer. Yes, they did. Wolf Smasher. They said they were moving away from apologetics. They didn't want to feature any more of those types of things. It was very wokish, pre-woke, and I didn't really have objections per se necessarily to what they were doing, but it was not quite my cup of tea, and they had other things that happened, and eventually the whole thing just sort of collapsed under the weight of the expense of it. But to give you an idea of the size of this event, 40 to 50,000 people showing up, just when I was there at least. But then by that last year that I went, it was down. It was less than half that, so it had diminished quite a bit. So that was my chance, my first real introduction to Jacques Ellul, and I have made up time since then. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, maybe 8 books by him now. And I've read probably 2/3 of them. I didn't read Technological Society. I was able to get the gist of it pretty easily through the Cliff Notes or whatever, but some of the other ones I read more at length. And one of those was the book called Propaganda. Now this book was life-changing for me. It pulled together just a lot of the different strands of research that I had already been doing on my own, but I didn't have a coherent picture of what was going on. And he provided me that picture. Now, ironically, let's see here, it was I believe originally 1962. I'm looking at the front matter here. Copyright 62, but also a copyright 65. So right about there. So long time ago, long before we had the internet, certainly, right? Long before we had more than 4 channels on the television, certainly. Pre-cable, pretty sure cable didn't come out to the 70s. But radio, newspapers, the 3 channels, movies, and what he brought to the table was he doesn't source his arguments. If I could say that if there was one weakness to it, and I'm just kind of looking here. Here's a decent bibliography, I guess, but it's not really footnoted, so you can't really track down the different paragraphs to what he's saying at any given moment. But yeah, actually the bibliography is not so bad. I might want to pick up some of these books that are on here. But he had it figured out. And why did he have it figured out? Well, he came from the same basic milieu as George Orwell. He was a Frenchman during World War II. He was part of the French Resistance for a little while. He one of his major influencers was Karl Marx, and as near as I can tell, he never stopped liking Marx. It's a little annoying for me to like somebody who likes Marx. I have a personal problem with that. But in his defense, Ellul's defense, he recognized that ideologically speaking, his Christian faith was not compatible with communism, and moreover, his experience with actual communists in the 30s and 40s, like with Orwell, turned him pretty sour on the whole thing. In fact, if anything, he went, well, he's a Christian anarchist. He's like all the way on the other, like if you can get to the opposite end of the spectrum, he basically found it. Now he doesn't necessarily, he's not an anarchist in the sense of some of the folks that you see running wild on X right now. But he pretty much thinks we Christians should get out of the government and stay out. And I'm not saying that I agree with that. And I'm not here to tonight, at least, to talk about anarchy and his views on anarchy to see if it can be redeemed or not. I'm here to talk about what his views were on manipulating the masses, and on that, he was extremely insightful, and he recognized what was coming was already under development. It was the technological state already in the 50s and the 60s had arrived, and per the argument of another man, who was living through the same time and observing many of the same things, although I don't think C.S. Lewis spent time visiting Marxist training sessions or anything. Not that I'm aware of it, but he had eyes, he could read, he could see things. The outlines were already there of the thing, of the technocratic state. And I don't mean it was like coming, I mean it was there. The framework was there. And the thing with the technocratic state is that the idea is you have technocrats, you have people who believe they're smarter than you, which I don't know who you are. I mean, maybe they are smarter than you, but by and large, they're not the people who think they're smarter than you. They tend to be just normal people who, because of various privileges that they may have obtained either through wealth, through family, through connections, or whatever. Excuse me. Think that they're better than you, and believe that they have the right to decide how society is going to be run. But there is a problem with the technocratic society. These technocrats need a way to achieve their ends, because they can't go from one technocrat can't go house to house, getting the people in that house, spending 5 weeks with a family to try to get them to adopt the policies and the mentalities that they want them to. It's just not feasible. So they turned to mass media, obviously, right? That became their tool. Now, in other places, the technocrats did go house to house. You had the Stalinist purges. You had the Cultural Revolution with Mao, and we already talked about Pol Pot. So we should be thankful, I guess, that at least in the West, that when these technocrats surveyed their options for imprinting the mentalities that they wanted on us, they at least did not do that. So thank you for that, I suppose, I guess. And this really does tie in with the podcast that I did. I think it was last week. I'm not going to talk about it here, but I'll just sort of to remind everyone here what I'm talking about. I did a session on NSSM 200, and that was all technocracy. That's catching in my mouth for some reason. And at the end of this report, which calls basically for global depopulation, they have a list of ideas on how to change attitudes, because that's what they want to do. And of course, top of the list is use the mass media. Shocker, right? So let me get this smaller a little bit. So one of my problems here with pursuing this in this podcast is that to really dig into the what Ellul argued, we'd have to actually read some of his stuff. And I don't know, a podcast just isn't a really great format for that, is it? Probably not. I mean, I have it ready. Check this transition out. See, I got it all ready. I just don't know if I should sit here and actually like read it. But I think it might be useful to read some snippets. But before I do, let me attempt to summarize some of the contentions, and then I will read some selections. Here's the basic thing. Civilization has arrived at a point. I'm trying to summarize and synthesize and paraphrase Ellul for you. Civilization has reached a point where there are so many levels and layers of bureaucracy and agencies and institutions that the individual can no longer make any sense of it at all. The individual is powerless to do anything. The individual looks out into the world at the situation that he finds himself in and says to himself, "This sucks. What can I do about it? Nothing. Damn it." That's my my Seinfeld impression. And in that context, then, if you have a bunch of people who feel powerless in that way, what you actually have is a very volatile mix of people who are primed to lash out violently, probably, at these forces that are weighing down on them. And if you're not careful, if you're a technocrat, if you don't find a way to marshal those forces, the impulses of those people, they're coming for you. And history has shown that too, right? Well, there's so many examples that we could get. Coups and uprisings and all the purges and whatnot. And I've often said that one of the main things that the progressives of the progressive era, 1900 and 1920, today's resurgent progressives basically want to do all the same things that they wanted to do in 1910, but this time figure out a way to do it without murdering millions of people or being murdered yourself in the sleep through like an uprising. So they're trying to walk that line. And the solution that the technocrats have for this is propaganda. You give a person something to hate, and you goad them in that direction. You give them their 2 minutes of hate, and then this allows you then to do whatever it is that you wanted to do. Who has heard the immortal phrase, "Never let a crisis go to waste. That is like, that's the 2 minutes of hate mentality. Not of the people who are of doing the hate, but the people who are being worked on and manipulated. There's a crisis. Maybe it was manufactured. Maybe they brought it out intentionally. Maybe it happened by accident, but now it became, it's a pretext to whip people up into even more anger so that you can go and achieve your aim. Never let a crisis go to waste. Rahm Emanuel, in case you're looking for the appropriate name. So that's the summary of the basic premise of Propaganda by Jacques Ellul. Let me go through it, and now I'm going to read just a little bit of it here. Let's get rid of the buddy. Let's get him out of here. And just for a minute, I'm going to get rid of my face. You didn't want to see it anyway. There we go. Okay. First, let's just start with, I will probably be skipping around a little bit. There we go. This is on my my eugenics website, by the way, because this does tie in with the way the eugenicists, especially modern eugenicists, think about conditioning people and whatnot. Anyway, so this is Ellul now. He's writing about people today in the 50s and 60s. Above all, he is a victim of emptiness. He is a man devoid of meaning. He is very busy, but he's emotionally empty, open to all entreaties and in search of only one thing, something to fill his inner void. To fill this void, he goes to the movies, only a very temporary remedy. He seeks some deeper and more fulfilling attraction. He is available and ready to listen to propaganda. So this, I believe, is one of the core features that allows propaganda to work. And I should say that he dives into this significantly and explains how one of the main purposes of the technocracy and by extension propaganda is actually to break up all of the fellowships and relationships that we have with each other, to atomize people. It goes on right there. Just if you just keep reading. He is the lonely man, and the larger the crowd in which he lives, the more isolated he is. But they want to create that. They want to break the bonds between family members, the bonds within the community to your church or organizations or whatever. That stuff is bad. If you have any kind of allegiance at all besides the state, that's bad to the technocrat. And I shouldn't, maybe in this context, I shouldn't say the state. I should just say the techno state would be kind of a better. So that they want to exacerbate that. But the result of that, which was already in progress all by itself, the atomization of individuals and the destruction of faith, right? The undermining of biblical values, the rejection of God, all the dissolution of the family, the vacuous nature of a lot of the work that people are forced to do. This creates a lot of people who look at their lives and they're like, what the hell am I doing? This is just a meaningful existence. And we're not made for that. Now, they don't think we're made at all, but I'm a Christian. I can talk that way if I want. We're not made for that. And so if we have had every basis for meaning ripped away from us, and we feel like there's no reasonable way to get it back. That alienation, to use a word that the commies like quite a bit, it's a dangerous thing, both individually and socially, because no one can live like that. And I think we're still seeing that dramatically even today. Not, I shouldn't even say it like that. Not even today. We are seeing that dramatically today. Deaths of despair continue to go up, and no one can seem to really do anything about it. And it has to do with all the different things that have been dissolved around us. All the different things that used to give us meaning have been stripped away or watered down or whatnot. And now we're just waiting for some kind of purpose. And this is where the propagandists then I told you I'm not going to read it all. That would be absurd in this format. You just give people the meaning, so they don't create their own meaning and do something rash, like overthrow the technocrats. That would be bad, in their opinion. So it's the job of the technocrat to give someone meaning, and the way that they do that is to give us our regularly scheduled 2 minutes of hate. Now let's go on here. In this section here, yeah, that's right, JB. That's right. So this section here is talking about how while all this is happening, as people individually feel powerless to change the circumstances of their own lives and of the world, certainly, they're pushed down, and this creates a resentment, which is again fertile territory for that outreach of anger. I'm gonna try to here we go. So the situation that I've described, Ellul points out, man finds intolerable. It's horrible. If you tell someone, let me rephrase it, under the materialistic worldview, no one is worth a hill of beans. We're all just going to die, become dirt, and eventually the universal heat death will overcome us all. And there's no meaning in any of that. Nothing's important. Eat, drink, and be merry. I guess that's about all you got. But we can't stand that. We can't handle that. Ellul writes, man cannot stand being unimportant. He cannot accept the status of a cipher. So even if science tells him he's unimportant, he just can't believe it. He won't believe it. So he needs to assert himself somehow. He needs to see himself as a hero. He needs to feel he is somebody, be considered as such. So propaganda is going to serve this up by giving them a legitimate thing to hate. Let's see. I might come back to some of these things here, but I want to get through. Here we go. Actually, this whole paragraph is good, so I'm going to start with this. So, in light of how desperate and empty people feel for whatever reasons. He says propaganda offers release on a grand scale. Propaganda will permit what so far was prohibited, such as hatred, which is a dangerous and destructive feeling and fought by society. But man always has a certain need to hate, just as he hides in his heart the urge to kill. Propaganda offers him an object of hatred, for all propaganda is aimed at an enemy, and the hatred it offers him is not shameful, evil hatred that he must hide, but a legitimate hatred which he can justly feel. Moreover, propaganda points out enemies that must be slain. I guess I'm just going to keep reading here. Here we go. Moreover, propaganda points out enemies that must be slain, transforming crime into a praiseworthy act. Almost every man feels the desire to kill his neighbor. I like some of my neighbors. But this is forbidden, and in most cases, the individual will refrain from it for fear of the consequences. But propaganda opens the door and allows them to kill the Jews, the bourgeois, the communists, and so on, and such murder even becomes an achievement. Yes, this is how people are radicalized. And it's intentional, is the thing. Like, this is kind of where I'm going with tonight's podcast, is to, like, Ellul is not saying, like, oh, well, I have found a trend that has spontaneously occurred in society, is happening, maybe we should do something about it. No, this is engineered. There are people who know this about us, and they are using it against us. And I hate to get into current events because there would be so many options, but one really glaring example right now is what's happening to all the Teslas getting scratched and stuff. Like, they were given something to hate, and they were told it was righteous to hate Elon, and we're lucky that so far all they're doing is keying cars. But you don't have to go back too far. The summer of 2020, I would say, for another example of almost the exact same thing. But I do think that the next section, even though I don't want to focus on it, he in this section, he's pointing out that through this process they are able to also make sexual dalliances. I'm not exactly sure how to say this. Also righteous. It took away the stigma of divorce and adultery, and all sorts of other things. And the people who had kind of no other way to find meaning and purpose in their life still felt guilty about this behavior because they're made in the image of God, and they can try to just wave it away, but their hearts condemn themselves. But then swooping in is the technocrat who says, no, it'll be fine. And then Ellul says, the lifter of the band becomes a hero, a demigod. And we consecrate ourselves to serve him because he has liberated our repressed passions. I'm almost done reading this. I'll just use this to sort of sum up a little bit of it. This speaks to the point I was making a moment ago. Ellul is writing this again in the 60s. We have demonstrated that far from being an accident, propaganda performs an indispensable function in society. One always tries to present propaganda as something accidental, unusual, exceptional, connected with such abnormal conditions as wars. True, it may become sharper and more crystallized, but there's the key point right here. It is the inevitable result of the various components of the technological society and plays so central a role in the life of that society that no economic or political development can take place without the influence of its great power. Never let a crisis go to waste. So I will probably end up reading a little bit more from my other screen in a moment here. But there is I've had this conversation many times, but I had it a couple times recently where someone said, no, that doesn't happen, and I'm impervious to it anyway. And what Ellul points out, it's actually this is the crazy thing about this. It's the educated person that is the most susceptible to propaganda. So I have this up here. This is from the preface, actually, of the book. Excuse me, the introduction of propaganda. But it was such a good summary, I decided to leave it here. Modern propaganda can't work without education. Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah. It's the smart people that are the greatest suckers, because the smart people think they can never be taken in. And this is actually kind of like where I was in 2007, 2008, where I was talking about how, it just never occurred to me that somebody could like lie to me. But Ellul makes the argument, and I think he's right, that a lot of this, the propaganda, the mass media stuff, it requires a certain level of actual literacy. And if people are not reading, or they're too busy doing things and don't have the time to go to the movies, listen to the radio, all those kinds of things, those people are immune to propaganda. They're out of the reach, at least not through the direct fashion. It's us smart people who are watching the news all the time, and we're the ones who are vulnerable. It's the probably the one who is most susceptible to propaganda is the one with 5 PhDs, would be my guess, because that person is a believer in the system, right? It's a hypothetical. I don't know anyone with 5 PhDs. But my point is like that person is someone who's like, all knowledge comes through the bottleneck of the authorities and the experts who would never lie to us. And now I have my paper that says that I'm smart. In fact, I have 5 of them, and now I get to be a member of the technocracy myself. We have a question. Does social media like TikTok make less educated people more vulnerable to propaganda? I would say absolutely. I think Jacques Ellul would indicate that as well. Because what he says, and maybe actually I already have it ready to go. So this section is talking about the prerequisite that you need literacy. So I'm not seeing the part that I want, though. Let's move that aside for a minute. Yeah, he has a whole section. Propaganda must be total. The propagandist must utilize all of the technical means at his disposal. And then what he's going to do is he's going to start talking about the different like subgroups and how different subgroups get reached in different ways. But the easiest way is to use mass media. And when a person who's maybe not necessarily as educated as the elites are, I don't know, maybe elites go on TikTok. I just don't know. Social media, as we saw over the last 8 to 10 years, is a powerful way to reach average people. The decentralized internet, and I don't want to get ahead of myself here a little bit, but when the internet was decentralized and you didn't have the like 3 to 5 core tech companies controlling everything, people kind of spread out, and it was a lot harder to convey a message that went to everybody. But everybody was on Facebook, and very, very quickly they discovered on Facebook and on Twitter at the time that they could control the narrative, and then they could control whatever it is that they wanted, and they could achieve it. Now, I'm not as familiar with TikTok, but I'm assuming that it would kind of function in the same way. And the problem with TikTok is, up to this point, been controlled by Chinese interests. So we're not really sure what narratives that they're running, but that doesn't necessarily mean that our narratives are any more innocent. In fact, I hate all this stuff. I actually despise the people who think that it is appropriate for them to decide what we should all believe and how we should act and what things should give us meaning and purpose. And that, again, is one of the reasons why I decided to do this podcast tonight, to let people know, if they don't already know, that there are people who they believe that that's their job. So I'm going to go back to the first scene here and touch on something that I said earlier about the person who thinks that they're out of reach. They're impervious to propaganda. They can sort through it all. They can see right through it, and it probably isn't even happening anyway. That was what came up when I was talking about NSSM 200 with somebody. Like this person believes that the birth rate just fell all by itself. There was no conditioning or civilizational massaging. It just sort of happened. And of course, well, I don't want to get into it. So one of the arguments that I made in response to that is that the big money shows, like, the big money puts the lie to that. You've got people dumping tons and billions of dollars, millions of dollars for sure, for like a major company or something in advertising, whereas it's just branding, right? All it is branding. They dump the money into it. There's no direct sale component. These companies would not be doing it if they did not get a payoff. Somehow, somewhere, the propaganda, the advertising, however you want to frame it, it was working, because businesses don't do things that, not on purpose, and or at least not very long, that don't work. Okay, so as an example, to set the stage for the rest of this, I have another video queued up here. This is one of my favorites. Hey, where are you? So hopefully the volume doesn't get too crazy here. Here we go.
Hi, I'm Fox San Antonio's Jessica Headley.
And I'm Ryan Wolf.
Our greatest responsibility is to serve our Treasure Valley communities,
the El Paso, Las Cruces communities,
Eastern Iowa communities,
Mid-Michigan communities.
We are extremely proud of the quality, balanced journalism that CBS 4 News produces.
But we are concerned about troubling and irresponsible, one-sided news stories
plaguing our country.
The sharing of biased and false news has become all too common on social media. More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
The sharing of biased and false
news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media outlets publish
publish these things simply aren't true without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
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 So pompous. So pompous. So you can find that pretty easily on YouTube. If no one can find it later, let me know and I can send you the link to it. That happens frequently, actually. Are you getting the idea that it's dangerous to our democracy? Yeah. One of my earliest discoveries was in probably was all the way back around 2010, 2011. As I was learning how to promote the books that I publish and things, I was issuing press releases and that sort of thing, and I discovered, strangely, that in newspapers and other places, people were the newspapers were just publishing as articles copied and pasted press releases from whoever issued the press release. Just throw it out there as an article, and it was easy. As soon as I sort of caught on to it, it was easy to verify. You just copy like one sentence or two out of the paragraph and and put it in, and then like 50 articles pop up. And with a little bit of sleuthing, you were almost always able to find the original press release. So there's our people who are in charge of the gatekeepers of the information, who were all so worried about the dangers of misinformation that I'm sure every one of them went and fact checked the script that they were given. But they're given scripts all the time. Like there's whole companies that exist to give the news organizations scripts at the local level, and they use them, and they just post people's companies' press releases and government agencies' press releases without any kind of checking whatsoever, without any indication whatsoever that you're actually reading somebody's press release and not actually, like, you thought it was an article that the newspaper produced. No, it was a press release. Someone trying to sell you something, and they just put it in their whole cloth. So don't like if you were thinking that this doesn't happen, I hope that supercut alone is enough to like kind of open the possibility for you, so that you will begin surveying the world through a different set of eyes with a certain more skepticism, because in my opinion, a lot of this is existential on a personal level. On a personal level, the idea that some, I'm censoring myself, some guy in some high rise in New York, or some legislator in DC or whatever, is deciding what things that I think are important, like they're deciding for me my values and stuff. I don't want that. And I think those people, a lot of them, are just morons. I look back through the last 30 or 40 years, and they've broken so many things. They should all be fired. They deserve the revolution that they're trying to hold off by keeping us constantly angry, usually angry at each other, right? Or individual targets. And that actually speaks to one of the other things that I have queued up here, ready to go. I think this is what it's kind of how I see it also. These people think they're smarter, but they're not. On the other hand, if we don't step it up, and it isn't enough just to be educated, because as I pointed out, Ellul lays out in great detail that it's actually the educated people who fall for this stuff, hook, line, and sinker, because they trust the experts. And the word on the paper brings out its own authority, as it were. But the people who actually manage these things, they actually keep breaking them. They're not actually better than any of us, not really. We need to wise up, because there are reasons to think that they might seriously hurt us. And a good case in point, not that I wanted to really get into. I don't really care. I can do what I want, right? Let's get rid of C.S. Lewis for a minute. This is actually something from Rules for Radicals. Is like one of the techniques that they have is to single out an individual and basically attack them like to death, and to heap all the rage on them. That's Rules for Radicals, Saul Alinsky. And of course, that was the 2 Minutes of Hate, where they were attacking Goldstein. And it's what Ellul is talking about, how, propaganda gives you someone that you can righteously attack, right? And we have many examples of this, right? We have the burning down of whole neighborhoods in 2020, right? Because of the righteous cause of what's his face being supposedly murdered. But right now, as an example of the kind of thing where we are being manipulated, where the smart people could break things. I'm thinking of like the Ukraine crisis. We are told where it's been all of our hatred has been distilled through propaganda on Putin, the enemy, the bad guy, and we should just be ready to tear off our clothes and do whatever we want to go after this guy. And I was talking with a guy just a couple of days ago. He's ready for boots on the ground in the Ukraine. Like NATO. He wants NATO troops shooting Russians dead right now. That's the guy who is completely compromised. He's morally compromised. He's intellectually compromised. He's been reduced to an animal. They ring the bell. They give him something to yell at, be angry about. He's going. Now, I don't like Putin either. Actually, I have my own reasons for hating him that I never hear anyone talking about. And I'm not going to talk about now either. But you put troops, like, objectively speaking, if you start shooting Russians, they start shooting back, right? There's no reason to think that all the shooting is going to stay in Ukraine. Russia's not going to, he's not going to, what? Like, if we did that, then why wouldn't it escalate to like Alaska or London or Paris or whatever? I mean, whoever's shooting at them, everything's a fair game at that point, right? And there's that little thing about nuclear weapons being in the hands of Putin. A small factor is his ability to, and remember who we're talking about here. We're talking about the worst person who has ever lived. He's even worse than Hitler. The only person who's worse than Putin is Trump, right? So we're talking about really, really, really bad. And we're going to goad this person who we think is really, really bad. We're going to goad that person who has nuclear weapons to the ability he could wipe out the world. Like we'd all work together, right? In a nuclear holocaust. That guy who we've been told to hate because he deserves it with our utmost energy, because he deserves it. He's just so bad. That's the guy we're going to go and start shooting at with real boots. Real boots. Whoa, man! I don't want to see that that barrel of that gun, shooting real boots, real bullets. That would be one example out of many, I think. But I give that example as an illustration, as if we really needed more, of how the smart people are not so smart, and how the stakes are really high. And if we just mindlessly submit to the machinations of the propagandists, it could be all of our demise. We already have a society filled with deaths of despair, especially men, but not exclusively men, of course. So people are killing themselves, they're turning to drugs and alcohol, all sorts of different things. We already have that. On top of that, we're going to destroy nations and maybe the world if we just continue to fall for this crap over and over again. Let me give you another example that I think might be at work today. I don't know if any of you have been paying attention on X. So there's this. I haven't tracked it down. I don't know like a lot of times before I dive into something, I want to track it down. Like some people are saying that big money is going into big soda because there is a threat that welfare funds will be restricted from buying pop. It's called pop. And pop companies get a ton of money from welfare recipients buying pop instead of buying healthy food. And I don't know where the rumor started. It's pop. It's pop. Wolf Smasher. It's pop. I don't know where the rumor occurred. Like, was there a news article? Did the White House say that they were going to try to advocate for removing this as an option for people to buy with their SNAP money or whatever? Or was it just was it the pop companies themselves seeing an opportunity? At any rate, there was a debate, and the accusation quickly emerged that the people who were advocating for this were being paid. Now, this is the Babylon Bee. It's a satirical site, and this so their fact check is pretty funny. I think Coca-Cola is delicious and refreshing. It's a unique taste and thirst-quenching delight in every drop. Make it the real thing. Make it a Coca-Cola. So there's going to be a war, pop versus soda war. That sounds like another podcast. But my point is, like, this has been consuming the X timeline now for at least a couple of days, and it's gotten very personal. And to me, this is I don't know who is the one with the agenda. Like I don't know where it came from, but someone has the agenda. Somebody wanted this to happen, and they made it happen, and it got personal, and pop sales are probably going to go up. So I guess that makes them one of the likely suspects. But it goes to this point about how with propaganda, it's always associated with hate, personal invective, and self-righteous anger. And I don't know what's going on with this, but this kind of thing happens every day. It's the outrage du jour, the daily outrage. And for as long as I've been paying attention, and I've seen it especially with the rise of social media, every day is something new to be angry about. And they want us to be angry, maybe to achieve an aim, or maybe just to keep us angry. And we should stop falling for it. Okay, when you start to learn who these people are and what they're all about, you would never trust them to be in charge of your emotions. You wouldn't even entrust them to be the local dog catcher. All right, so I got some other things here. If you want to get some questions ready for me, I'd be happy to entertain them here. Let's see here. Oh, that's not the one. I already went through that one. Yeah. So this is we would be remiss if we didn't talk about one of the, sorry, I'm trying to, I'm sure you can read it, but it's just bothering me that I can't get it right here. Now, I did not take the time to verify if this is the actual quote from this person, because these they can lie. It's not difficult for people to make up stuff that's done by supposedly posted by somebody or whatnot. I don't know, but I do know that at the time during COVID, there were people saying things like this. And this is an exact example of what Ellul was saying propaganda would do. And how it justifies violence. Like it creates the stage for somebody to lash out in anger, perhaps physically. So this would have been, and I know that people were talking like this. So I don't know if this is absolutely legit, but I could have spent some time and found others for sure. So this is pretty crazy. Either get the shot, the vaccine, or get shot. Wow. The unvaccinated need to be rounded up and lined up in front of open trenches. Their choice is simple. Now, in the year 2020 and 2021, you could say things like this on Twitter and you would be okay. But if you replied in anger or tried to object, you would be banned. Your voice would be removed from the conversation. And this was the thing that was being, this was the crisis that couldn't go to waste. Because from their point of view, right, it makes sense. The people who are not vaccinated are like actual murderers, right? Because people would get COVID and die presumably, and so you can't have someone who is like, if anyone is knowingly turning away the possibility that they won't be a human death missile, and they want to continue to go out into society infecting people and killing them, then obviously you're dealing with the worst kind of person. And what can you do to the worst kind of person? Whatever the hell you want, because they're the worst person. And I had actual conversations, like face-to-face conversations with people who didn't come out with this, but it was clear they thought I was the worst of the worst for not getting vaccinated. And you could try to tell them, and I did, that it's one thing if the vaccines work, then you can make it. But like they hadn't even been tested yet. There was no reason yet at the time to actually know that they would work. It was kind of weird. Usually a vaccine is like tested for a while and you have some sort of body of evidence. But they were putting it out and testing it at the same time, and there was no the same data for its efficacy, the same quality of data that you had for that was the same quality of data that you had for whether or not it was safe or not, which is none. Like zero. Like they just put it out there and everyone's supposed to do it. And hey, if you didn't do it, you're just an absolute terrible person. So we just lived through this. We just lived through Jacques Ellul's propaganda, the desire to hate, the desire to just physically murder the people who we disagree with, because they're bad people and they deserve it, right? And it gives us meaning in life. Like That's the other side of it. Like you could just go about your life minding your own business, but if you have a meaningless life, which many feel that they do, then getting mad, in this case with the coronavirus holdouts, that was something you could do, right? And it was righteous. It was righteous anger. Now you have meaning and you have purpose, and nothing is going to be able to hold you back now because you are righteous and the person you're dealing with is not. So we just lived through that. And the really weird thing, disturbing thing, is that while many people figured it out, there are still people who think that the vaccines were effective, even after they've gotten like 10 boosters. Actually, I don't know if I've heard of anyone who's gotten 10 boosters, but I think I've started to read people who've gotten their 4th and 5th boosters who are starting to say, you know what, maybe it doesn't work, because they also keep getting COVID. We were told that masks work. Wear your mask or you hate all people. And now it didn't take very long to figure out from once they actually started doing the studies. This is an entirely different topic. The point is that everything that we were told was the case was either exaggerated or just outright lies. Yeah, that was only 4 years ago. So if you have lost track of if you were saying those things then and have not taken the time to fact check yourself to see how legit your self-righteous hatred for your fellow man really was, make sure you got it right before you decided to just despise them, there's nothing I can do for you. But hopefully you'll want to. Hopefully you'll go back and you'll look at this now, especially now that I've kind of laid out some evidence that the people who are managing us are doing it completely intentionally. They know we need the outlet for anger. They know we need it, and they want to give it to us, and they do give it to us. And we should stop falling for it. Okay, so minute or two here. Any questions or comments? While you're typing, I should say that on Thursday, Thursday is going to be this Thursday, March. I don't even know what today is. March 27th. I've got a real treat for you. We are going to have someone coming on this program anonymously, whose identity will be concealed, so that this person can give us some real insight into what is happening in a not great way in some of the world's biggest corporations. And so that will actually be later. That's going to be 10 p.m. Central Time on Thursday. So it's going to be later in the evening. I couldn't do the regular time, and it worked out for this person to do it later anyway. So I don't know if you want our sort to stay up as late as 10 p.m. Central Time, but I know that I'm going to have questions for this person, and you probably will too, after we hear what he has to say. I see no questions or comments, so I would like to thank you for watching this. Again, like, share, and subscribe. I mentioned that there was a book. I do publish this book on gutenbookpress.com. It's on Amazon as well. The eugenics movement made huge use of propaganda. This book is not about propaganda, but if you're looking for a way to support this program, sure, you can write me a check, or you can just buy our books. You can go buy that one and build your library and augment an angle of this propaganda debate. Next week, I'm planning for some other interesting topics. I should have some carbonated beverages to discuss, actually, JB, your last comment. So that's it. Thank you for watching. Really appreciate it. Get ready for another smooth transition. Peace out, home slices.